You're listening to the Mangroves to Mountains podcast, where we talk all things outdoors, hunting, fishing, paddling, camping, adventure travel, and more. Thanks for listening. Hey, Paul, how are you?
Hey, I'm well. How you doing, Jim?
Pretty good. Yeah, thanks for coming on the show, the Mangroves to Mountains podcast.
I love it.
You're our first official guest. So we had Mary Lucy on. We did kind of a co-host thing in Greece, but you're my first interview / official interview. So, and you were the first person I thought of. So for this.
Oh, cool. Very cool.
So you want to just quickly, or not so quickly, introduce yourself? Just tell me what you do for a living and what your interests are.
Sure, certainly. So, I think might be important to know is that I was born and raised in South Florida. And, that provides context for a lot of the things we'll be talking about, the changes I've observed over time. And I would say that I was introduced to the outdoors, or what I would think of as the wilderness, early on by my parents. And I've been to most of the state and national parks in Florida, all the way throughout Florida. And then also all over the United States. So I would say that, I'm always looking to be in wild places. And that's what I put a lot of my time and energy into, getting into those places. And once I'm there, I know it's all worth it, no matter what I had to do in order to get there.
Trying to keep them wild too, right? I know that's important.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. Absolutely. So, that's something that we could touch on as well. One of my current projects.
Yes.
Restoring some globally imperiled pine rockland.
Yeah, talk about that a little bit.
Sure. So I came across a small parcel, about 4 acres of pine rockland that had somehow been missed by development. And I was able to acquire this property, and it was in fairly good shape. And in fact, it was designated by Miami-Dade County as a natural community area. And as a result, it has special restrictions placed upon it. And as far as I'm concerned, that's wonderful. There are a lot of people that don't like the fact that they can buy a piece of land and they're told what they can and cannot do. But it's also not, it wasn't sold at market price. So, that's something that people need to understand as well. There are some restrictions. So it's something that I thought my philosophy and the philosophy of the county actually was fairly parallel. And because this land was set aside, it had a little bit of damage done to it by some of the previous owners that didn't really follow the rules, or maybe they didn't know what they're meant to be doing. But either way, there was a little bit of damage as a result. There's some exotic invasive species that began to take over some of the areas, but the land is still considered to be of very high quality when it comes to native habitat.
And getting better, right? With the improvements you've done.
Absolutely. Yep. So I've been working on it for about 4 years. I've removed almost all the exotic invasives on the first acre. So I have 3 more acres.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm now kind of working on it.
Let me know if you need help. Nick and I can come out and sweat a bit, put in some sweat equity.
Yeah, my goodness, I tell you. Mosquito repellent, et cetera, poison wood, on and on. But it's a labor of love. It's something that I've been thinking about for a long time, and something I'm constantly doing. So I'm doing it.
And you're building on it now, or have built?
Yeah. So actually, yeah. So in kind of, in fact, that's where I am now. We've just finished a house, and the footprint of the house is I was very careful about where we were going to place the house. And we actually decided I worked with the architect and the other people. We went to the site. I didn't want to take down any of the native Dade County pine. So we selected an area that had been damaged already, had been basically rock plowed. And that's basically where we kind of set up the area for where the house was going to be. So I'm trying to be, as have as little impact as possible. But
yeah, I'm anxious to see it. I haven't seen the finished house yet, so yeah, when you're ready, I'll come out and check it out.
Yeah, it'd be great. Yeah, it's great.
Permission.
It's yeah, yeah. I think a lot of people, if I were to send photos of the house, they would be like, "Where are you? You looks like you're in North Carolina or Georgia," just because of all the pine trees and yeah, even some of the contractors that have come by, they're like, how did you find this place? I couldn't even find this place with the address. So it's in a neat place. It's not, that far away. I wish it was a little bit deeper away, but still, I appreciate what I have. So
and you're cool. Near a very special place to you and to me, a certain national park. You want to mention?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so it's about 5 miles from Everglades National Park, a little bit further away from Biscayne National Park, and the Keys are just down the road. So it's situated in a really nice. The location is great. So it's just a matter of getting going with my next boat, whatever that might be, and getting out on the water and starting to fish routinely.
Yeah, we'll talk about that for sure tonight. So you want to talk about your fishing background? Have you always fly fished? I know that's your thing now. Has that been your thing always? Did you start with conventional tackle? Did you?
Right. So I did start with conventional tackle. I started with a bait caster. And that's a challenge.
Yeah.
But then compared to fly fishing, I had no idea what I was getting myself into. And it was, I had some friends that invited me to go down to the Keys, and I met their father was actually a fly fisherman. And I just went out on the boat with him and his buddy, and we just anchored somewhere down a Big Pine Key, and they started fly fishing for tarpon. And just, it was the sound of the line going through as they were double hauling, the way the sound of the line as it would actually, as they would actually shoot their cast, and then of course catching some these are like baby 40 and 50 pound tarpon that they were catching. But it was introduced to me in person, and my first reaction to that was, what is going on? This is crazy. That's for trout fishing. And
okay, we're good.
Okay.
So had you fly fished before that experience in the Keys? Like, had you trout fished anywhere or bass fished?
No.
Okay, that was the first. Okay.
Yeah, and that was in the late.
What an introduction! That's crazy.
Yeah, it was cool. And these are people these are two guys that have been written about in books, and I think the community of fly, the fly fishing community would know who these guys are. They're old timer. I just happened to be on the boat with them. That was kind of cool. So I didn't know they're as cool as other people actually knew they were.
And then you've done a lot of fly fishing since then, mostly in Florida, but you've also fished for trout, right?
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what was interesting, so I was introduced to fly fishing. I started fly fishing in saltwater right away. Then I moved away for a while to Kentucky, and that's when I really began to, so I had a big backyard in Kentucky because, housing situation's so different there. And I really learned to fly cast in the backyard in snow. It sounds odd, but in Kentucky, I couldn't make sense of winter, coming from South Florida. I was just like, what is going on? Why is water not liquid? So I just, I had this diagonal that I could cast, and I was literally out there casting, learning. I was determined to be a really good caster. And so I would cast all the time out in the snow. There's not much else to do in the winter in Kentucky, except build a boat. And that's something I did as well. So I did eventually, because I lived there, I wasn't too far away from the Appalachians. So I was able to go down to the Smokies, that national park. It's a place that I love as well. So I went and I learned how to trout fish down there. So.
And did you have a mentor for that, or were you kind of figuring out as you went, or a friend, or?
That was just, no, that was pretty much on my own. I think that as a young kid, it was one of those places that my parents took me to in the early summer. So it had always been a magical place, those streams throughout the park, and I could just never get enough. And I like to do things the hard way, and so all I do is dry fly fish, and it's I became mesmerized by watching an elk hair caddis or PMD, just kind of finding out the path it's going to take as it goes from one pocket to the next.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel like the Smokies, well, the Appalachians in general are just amazing, would be incredibly amazing even if you couldn't fish. You know what I mean? Just to be
Absolutely.
there, just so incredible. The topography, these super old mountains, and then be able to fly fish for for jewel-like trout on top of that is something special. Like, it's heaven for me.
Yeah, and you mentioned jewels. Salamanders were some of the first things that were, really got me interested in the Smokies as well. And the Southern Appalachians has the greatest diversity of salamanders in all the U.S., possibly to a greater extent. Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, just all the microclimates and some of the relatively speaking, high altitude and southern extension.
Very cool. My friend Dalton, he's a middle school teacher. He teaches English, and on the last day of school, I think the last couple days this past school year, he took his class out there's some woods really close to the school, and they just went out there, and there's a little stream, and they were just spent a couple hours looking for salamanders, and the kids were so excited. He said they were like, this is the best class we've had all year. This is incredible. And then he was identifying them and for them, and they're just just got them excited about nature.
Oh, absolutely.
Really great way to end the school year, I think, for them.
Yeah, get them started in the summer.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
So you want to talk about your professional background with science?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, sure. So, when I went to Florida International University, and I'm a biology major, and I was walking through the halls, actually during holiday, my first year there, and I ran into one of my favorite professors that I'd had. And he's like, "Hey, what are you doing?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm just looking around." And he goes, "You're looking for a job?" I'm like, "Yeah." So it's like, good. I need one. I need someone like you to come into my lab. So it was great because it was my introduction to how science is done, and in particular ecology. So it was an ecology lab doing research in the Everglades, and it was really too good to be true. And it also had a really positive impact on me because there were very serious students working in the lab, and they held me accountable. And but again, it was another situation where my passions lined up with a job opportunity. So it was great to take the courses that I was taking, and then also work in the lab. And also, I loved going out and doing field work and collecting specimen and coming back and identifying all of them. So that was a great experience. So that was kind of my introduction to the science part. Then, of course, I went to school there and completed my degree in biology. And then right after I did that, I started working full time as a field biologist for that same lab. And that was a great experience. It was a lot of fun. Basically piloting an airboat through Shark Slough, and also Taylor Slough, into Everglades National Park. It was actually quite a privilege to be able to do that. We had to follow a lot of rules. And
yeah, I read that in your bio. Even though we've known each other a long time, I didn't know that you'd ever piloted an airboat, or maybe you told me and it's I don't know. It was a while ago. Yeah, that's really cool. That was intriguing when I read that.
Yeah, something that may be of interest to you is driving an airboat during the dry season, and in the middle of the trail up ahead is a stag, nice. A male deer. Yeah, I mean, it's funny calling a Florida white-tailed deer a stag, or a buck, really. Yeah, so it was a buck just standing in the frozen, actually, in the trail of the airboat. Awesome. And I'm like, this is odd, but actually, not for the Everglades. It's not uncommon to see deer walking through the marsh. But yeah, that's something that was pretty cool. Yeah.
Have you ever fished from an airboat? I was just curious because I know Flip Pallett, he'll go out and he hunts and fishes from his airboat. Have you ever fished from one?
No, I haven't. But one thing that's really cool, I've spotted a lot of fish. And in many regards, I enjoy seeing giant snook in faraway places just as much as I might enjoy catching them. At least because then you dream about going back and catching them in those places. So the airboat afforded me a lot of the opportunity to get to places, Rookery Branch in particular. If you follow Shark Slough all the way down, you end up it ends the slough there transitions into at that ecotone into Rookery Branch. So yeah, that was always a fun place. I'd get a lot of volunteers to go with me when it was like, okay, we're doing those sites down the Rookery Branch. There were other fishing folks in the lab that would always want to go down the Rookery Branch.
Oh yeah, that's legendary.
So yeah, when we sampled.
Very cool.
Yeah.
And then
sorry,
go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that. Yeah. Then when I moved, so I did that for full time for a year. I had been doing that for about 3 years as an undergrad. Whenever I could, have days off. I would go out and help out, the other lab manager who was running that project. So I did that for 1 year. Then as I mentioned before, I moved to Kentucky, and then I kind of just fell into teaching, and I had no idea that I would enjoy it so much, and so much so that it turned into a career, and that's what I did for quite a long time. So started teaching. Pardon? Teaching
biology, right?
Yeah, biology, earth space science. I think I taught almost just about everything, except for physics. That's the only thing. It would have been fun, but never had the opportunity.
Yeah, that sounds like fun.
It is. I mean,
not to me.
Maybe it's like
I had a better
Yeah.
understanding of it, maybe it would be, but
Today we're teaching momentum. And why do you have a fly rod? Why are we all learning the fly
oh,
cast?
why do you have a
Momentum.
bow and arrow?
Yeah,
A
physics,
light
exactly.
arrow and a heavy arrow.
Yeah, we're going to talk about entropy and momentum and transference of energy.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, yeah, so it kind of made sense that I would, um, I just got more and more engaged in teaching, and then when I eventually moved back to Miami, um, I wanted to kind of take some of the experience that I had at FIU and use that in the classroom as much as possible. So, and I had all sorts of students, all sorts of students were interested um, in the Everglades, Biscayne Bay. A lot of the students, because I was at Miami Beach Senior High School, a lot of the students there were kids who lived near or on the water. So they had to at least cross the bay or in order to get to school, or they lived on the island itself. So, in many respects, it was kids that were already very interested in the classes that I was teaching. So
It makes our job easier, right? As teachers, when they already have an
absolutely,
interest.
yeah,
One of the reasons I
indeed.
chose to be an art teacher, kids typically are drawn to art and like it. And so, yeah, if it's something they're going to be interested in, it's easier than, say, teaching math, I think. It's hard to make that interesting, I think.
Yeah. Well, you could always break out the fly rod. Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah. Of course. Yeah. Math is. Yeah. That's a whole other discussion about how math is taught or not.
You want to talk a little bit about your art? We both have an interest in art, as I've mentioned.
Yeah.
I don't know how much we haven't talked about that in a while. Are you
Yeah.
painting again? Or are you anything in the works?
I haven't. I've been, working on this restoration for so long and I'm still kind of getting set up in this new house. But I do have, I guess, a man cave / studio situation that I will be building out hopefully within the next year or so. But I started doing a lot of nature journaling and taking a lot of notes just on birds, because now that I'm in one place, I think it's really interesting to see the timing of birds passing by, so, migration in particular.
Mm-hmm.
So back to your original question about the art. So that's something I started very young, and I've always just loved to do, where you can express your ideas in different ways, but I just would, my inclination was to just draw it out. And even as a teacher, I think that was really helpful, because I would draw things and the kids would be like, "Oh my God, you can draw." I'm like, can't everyone? Can't everyone draw a requiem shark perfectly?
Yeah, exactly.
So that was really helpful. But that's something I would like to get back into.
And now you'll have space. You could get back into sculpture too, if you wanted to, I think, right? You have
Sculpture.
space.
Yeah, it's interesting how creativity manifests. I've learned that I think although I think oil painting, and then I'm like, oh, I love oil painting, it's the best. But then I love watercolor, it's the best. Then I love, pencil, it's the best. And then I kind of discovered that I was a sculptor when I started building boats, and I didn't realize it. And I'm, just through reflection, thinking, why am I able to do this? Why does it work? I think because it's just been on it had been on tap for 40 years.
Yeah.
And it just
I thought
finally
that was when we first I should say you built a boat. I kind of like held wood in place and mixed epoxy and the skunk ape. the original skunk,
Oh
I
yeah.
guess. But I was amazed before we built it that you had a little model like to scale to I mean what
Yeah.
the scale was, but the ratio was. But it's like, oh my God! Like I think we met at like Fridays or something. You brought it to the restaurant, and, like this little mini boat,
Uh,
balsa wood. I think that was so cool.
yeah. Yeah. So building boats is much easier. If it's a relatively simple boat, the types of boats we're interested in, um, it's actually really pretty easy to build a boat. There's a saying that anyone can build a boat, not anyone can build a pretty boat. And I like pretty boats.
Yeah.
so that is where the challenge, holding yourself to um, to high standards. You can't have beer goggles on when you're building a boat and say, "Oh, that'll work," because she ain't gonna be pretty.
No.
But yeah, I mean, as far as boat building, yeah, you can just get a block of wood and you carve out a half model, which is really simple. You can do it with a grinder, sandpaper, pocket
Is that
knife.
commonly done? Because I don't know much about boat building, but is that, I mean, do boat builders and like wooden boat builders, do they typically do that? Or is that just,
Oh yeah,
they do?
absolutely.
Okay. Hmm.
Yeah, yeah, and then what you do is I mean, that's something that's been done since the beginning of boat building.
I imagine
Um,
so. Yeah.
yeah, where they just, once they kind of determine is it going to be a displacement, semi-displacement, or a planing hull, um, you carve out a boat that looks like a boat, and then you cut it into what are called sections, and then you just get or stations rather. So you cut these cross sections, and then you can just trace them on paper, and then you just, because it's a half model, then you just double it. You kind of just fold it over, and then you make sure that it's symmetrical. But it is actually, if you have an image in your mind of what it should look like, and you have the ability to kind of to change the shape of a block of wood, then cut it into these different sections, which are called then stations. That basically makes up the form or the mold.
Hmm.
And then if you do it, like a 1 inch to 1 foot ratio or scale, then it's pretty darn easy.
I guess
It
it's like a
really.
sketch. It's like a 3D sketch. When you build
Mhm.
the little boat model, I'd never thought of it that way before, but as you're explaining it, I'm just thinking like, because I was thinking 2 dimensions, like, because I don't really make 3D. I guess I do some ceramics, so it's 3D, but I'm not a sculptor. So boat building, I guess, is sculpting, right?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Especially, if you're not a woodworker like myself, I'm not a woodworker, I'm a grinder. Um, and, when it comes to sculpture, you can either, it's like you can either add or subtract, or you can do both. Um, so you can take a block of wood and carve away the things that don't look like what you want it to look like. Or you can, from some sort of like base, from a spine, you can work up from that. You can actually mold and sculpt
There's,
things in that manner.
there's that famous quote by Michelangelo that, I think it was an angel he was carving out of marble, and it was, he's not carving an angel, he's releasing the angel from that block of marble. He's removing everything that isn't an angel. And then
Exactly.
in the end, there it is.
Yep. You're exactly right. Yeah. So,
Easy
yeah.
for him, easy for him to say. Just
Right.
greatest
Absolutely.
artistic mind of all time. But
Yeah. Yeah. So boat building was, again, it was something that, when you're from a place where water is liquid year round, and then you move to a place where it freezes, you got to figure out what to do during that time, during winter. And so, yeah, boat building was something. I literally I lived up the hill from a Home Depot, and I had this tiny Corolla. And I just went, and I remember the guy saying, yeah, you can put this on the top, on your roof. And I'll help you tie it on. And yeah, so I just got a bunch of plywood and put it on the roof of the car and just went up the hill and started slashing away at it. And that was my first boat. Way overbuilt because I didn't know what I was doing. It was bulletproof. But yeah, way overbuilt.
Do you remember the dimensions of that? Just out of curiosity, what was it?
It was it was a 12 foot, what would you call it? It was a 12-foot displacement rowboat.
Oh, rowboat. Okay, cool.
Yeah. So in other words, it would do well at a design waterline speed. What is that? Yeah, square root of 1.3 times the length. The water line will give you the actual speed of it as it goes through the water. So yeah, so yeah, that was the first time. It was very impulsive. Built it in a weekend.
Oh my gosh! Wow.
Starting
Probably
Friday
up all night. Imagine.
Yeah, I kept going. Yeah, I pretty much kept going. We'd go in and warm up, because it was snowing outside. I had a little carport. I built it outside in this carport. Yeah, it was actually, because of the circumstances, it was quite memorable. And I had a hard time getting the epoxy to cure because it was so cold.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but it did eventually. West System epoxy is pretty good.
What's your next boat? What do you think?
I haven't decided. I think that I've actually thought of buying one, which is hard to, one that's already built.
Just to get on the water, or just to get on the
well,
water?
I mean, those of us who fish South Florida know that you really need more than one boat, just because of where we like to fish. I mean, even for inshore folks, I need to have a boat for fishing permit full time. So I need a boat that'll run fairly well. So I'm thinking some 16, 17 feet, and draft doesn't matter that much. Just something that'll
for the bay primarily.
Yeah, mainly Biscayne Bay, Content Keys, and I want to get a little more reach. So yeah, I was thinking something like that. Permit / tarpon, oceanside boat, and then also something like the original Skunk Ape, maybe a little bit longer, but a Skunk Ape type boat, just a poling skiff. That would be great for getting back into mangroves and but also being able to stand up and pole.
I don't know if you've heard the recent Andy Mill, the Millhouse episode with Hal Chittum, but he's building a boat to use in the no motor zone. That's a rowboat. Instead
that's
of
cool.
pulling in and out, it's literally going to be, you can row in and out. And then put the motor back on. I guess you pull it into the boat right when you get there, and then you got to take it out. You can't have it in the water, right? A motor.
Right. Yeah.
You can have it in the boat, just not in the water, correct?
You could. Yeah. Correct. Yeah. It has to. Yeah. It can't be on the transom.
I see. Okay.
Yeah. It has to be off the transom. At least those are the rules. Yeah. As far as I know them. No, that's interesting. Yeah. I mean, Chittum, I'm surprised it wouldn't be able to helicopter in or something like that, or levitate above the water.
Why not just walk on it? Just walk on the water.
Right, exactly. Just the Jesus 17, something like that. Yeah, I don't. Yeah, that's cool. That's interesting.
I thought of you right away because there's some, you tend to think outside the box when it comes to boat. Well, it comes to everything, but I was like, geez, it's so like, why hadn't anyone thought of it? Well, they probably had thought of it before, but to actually make a commercial boat that you can put oars on for flamingo, I mean, it's incredible. the idea of it. I don't know if it'll work, but it's a cool idea.
Yeah. Well, I mean, one of the, I'm also like really into birds. And, if you think of you look at ducks and you look at sailboats, and those are displacement hulls. If you're going, a rowing boat really should have a duck butt, if you will. It should, you get a lot of drag when you have a flat transom. So if the water can move around the water line of a hull, it should be shaped almost like a leaf, a willow leaf, a blade. The water meets at the stern, and then it comes back together. That's going to reduce the drag quite a bit. So to try to have obviously we're not talking about, trying to break any speed records with a rowboat, but the point is it'll row fine, but there's a trade-off when you're trying to design a rowboat, an efficient rowboat, and at the same time a boat that'll plane. But what you're starting to see is some curvature and the kind of a more tapered stern on some of the boats that pull really well. So that's been something that that's kind of the conflict. You're trying to build a boat that pulls well. A lot of the things that you do to the bottom of the boat are only going to participate under a dynamic situation. So if you're not running full speed, it doesn't matter how many fins or whatever you might have on the bottom, at least if they're really small. So when you're going at slow speeds, it's really just going to be the outside shape of the boat that is going to be most important for it to, when you're thinking about how it moves through the water. So, but yeah, that's interesting. I hadn't heard about that.
It may never happen, but it's a cool idea.
Oh, it is. Absolutely.
I'm sure it's probably been done way back when. Maybe not a rowboat.
Yeah.
But it's paddling in and out. I'm sure it's been done, of course, in canoes all the time, every day. But
yeah. So believe it or not, like the modern flat skiffs that we see, especially the extreme shallow water, those are basically a Jersey skiff. If you look at boats, wooden boats, and that's a boat that basically you could get on, go through the surf, and it had a flat bottom, so it wouldn't tip over, once it had landed. It's just up on the beach. So those are basically Jersey skiffs. And anytime you have a variable dead rise from along the planing surface, you're going to get a lot of drag and a lot of swirls, a lot of suction, a lot of interesting hydrodynamic behaviors going on underneath that hull as it, when it's interacting with the surface of the water.
Cool. Did you? What are your fishing plans coming up? You've been very involved in the house and the restoration of the property, but
so a lot of that. I would say my fishing plans really depend on the next boat that I'm going to get, and then I actually, I have a canoe right now that I go to out to some places just to, where others aren't, and to do some filming, and to, of course, just fishing and enjoying life in slow motion. That's what I am using the canoe for. The canoe is great because you just get into places where other folks really don't really put in the time and energy to get to.
One of my, this is a little bit off topic, but one of my bow hunting archery heroes, Fred Bear, he'd wear a Borsalino hat, and he'd always have flowers in the thing. I can't think what it's called. The felt
brim?
Not the brim itself, but I can't think of the material around where your head goes. If there's a term for it, but whatever. He's always had flowers stuck in there, and he said that when he when he's hunting and he's walking along, if he slows down to pick out pretty flowers, it makes him hunt more slowly. So he sees more, and animals move slowly when they're not being, disturbed. So by slowing down to look for flowers, kind of like smelling roses, I guess, literally, but same kind of thing, like life in slow motion, slowing down, seeing the details around us that we, in a powerboat, you might rush by, or just see more when you're in a canoe or a kayak. You just get, I think for me, you're more connected to the water and everything around it.
Absolutely. Yeah, I remember, when before I ever took a boat to Flamingo, I had canoed those areas so much that you can just canoe. You can pass a redfish and it won't even notice you, or yeah, or you just see laid up tarpon, you see sharks, you see all sorts of things in a canoe because you're going slow.
Mm-hmm.
And it really brings up an important point for all of us. I mean, the same could be said for polling.
Yes.
And you have a better view actually when you're polling. But you going slow, I think, is very really important. Because our pace, it takes a while to slow down. You just think about people who've driven down I-95, then the Turnpike, and then down the Park Road. The question is, have they actually had enough time to transition? Or are they still going like I-95 miles per hour?
Their brain probably is, right? I mean, it's hard not to.
Absolutely.
That's why I think those trips should be multi-day trips. You get into the rhythm of it. We were just in Greece, Mary Lucy and I, and we were there almost 3 weeks, but it takes me a couple days to disconnect from the Miami pace and get into the Greek pace, which is a lot like the Latin pace, but not in Miami. But just there's really no hurry. There's really nowhere to be. And it's kind of like the Keys. You don't wear a watch because there's only high tide and low tide, right? So you don't really need to know what time it is, or sunrise and sunset. Right. And once I get into that pace, I just enjoy life a lot more.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, any canoeing plans?
So I would, I do have some plans. There's let's say about a year ago, it could be longer now, but no, I think it was about a year ago, right about now. There's a place in the mangroves where I came across a large croc, a saltwater crocodile, and a lot of its offspring. I'm assuming that this is a female, a large female that gives birth to these young crocs that I have observed. And I went there not too long ago, and she was there, and I saw a couple of the offspring. It seems like they are young of year. So they were just, I mean, they're tiny. They're, around 10 inches.
So were you filming or?
Yeah. So I did a little bit of filming, and that's another thing that I kind of fell into, is just always wanted to have a decent camera to photograph birds and other wildlife. And during the pandemic, for a while I had the park to myself, and me and all the other, the actual natural residents. So it was great going down there, and I just started filming, and I would just, again, going slowly in my canoe, not expecting much, without a target. Oh, I got to get footage of this. I would just, look down the water and come across, a bunch of, cool, small alligators or small crocodiles, things that I hadn't really noticed before that are just sitting in the water. So a lot of cool fish that I hadn't seen in a while. Sawfish, small tooth sawfish, endangered species are nice to see as well. So But
What do,
yeah,
what do you do with the films, Paul? Do you, is there a YouTube channel or is it for?
no, I don't have a YouTube. I started doing, I did some virtual tours
Yeah. Are you still
of,
doing those? I was going to ask you about the virtual tours.
I haven't done them in a while. I stopped when uh, basically I stopped when I moved down here, and getting decent Wi-Fi was a serious challenge. I didn't realize it was going to be. Not that we're that far out. It's just they're just across one of the main streets, about half a mile away. They have all the regular internet suppliers, but where I am, they don't. So it took a while. So I just shut it down for a while. But I was doing these online virtual tours of the Everglades, and that was really fun. I really got into it. Filming's hard, but it's also, if you like to spend as much time as I do in the Everglades, just kind of sitting there, then it works out surprisingly well.
That's right up your alley. All,
Yeah.
All of your interests pretty much into one, right? Or most of them.
Yeah, absolutely. And it, so it's kind of neat to see some of the footage that I got. When you see, we've all seen, like, what is that, Blue Planet and Planet Earth. Those productions are absolutely amazing. When you go out and you try to get, do the Everglades version of that, it's hard to know. I mean, just learning the equipment, and I determined I'm going to learn how to use the camera that I have with the lenses that I have. I'm going to master it before I go on to buy anything else. Of course, I'm tempted to get another camera, and this will help me. But the thing is, I want to really master light, if you will.
Yeah, what I've found
with the camera,
filming especially the fishing outings, is to not be kind of like what you were just saying. Every day is not going to be stellar. You're not going to jump 10 tarpon out of the kayak every time. There will be days like that. So just, small victories are important. If you get a great sunrise or a bird you haven't seen in a while and you get great footage of it, or an alligator. And then over time, you can call that B-roll, but to me, it's more than B-roll. It's the interest of, for me, for my videos, and for yours is similar, I think. We look for things that are often overlooked. So yeah, none of it's B-roll.
Yeah. Right. In the end, you're right. In the end, it's not, because it's, we choose to go where we like the B-roll.
Yes. Exactly.
And it's like, you can go, I remember people would say, Port Everglades has huge snook. You can get to these huge snook in Port Everglades. I'm like, okay, I'll see you later. I'd rather go catch a small one.
But it's ugly.
In the wilderness. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the B-roll matters. The B-roll of Port Everglades fishing in 55 feet, 55 foot deep water, whatever the depth of that shipping channel is.
Yeah.
So B-roll matters, without a doubt.
Mm-hmm. Mary Lucy just handed me some notes, some questions. So.
Classic.
Okay.
Classic.
This is a myth buster one. Are we overrun with pythons? They're crawling out of every tree, right? You've been attacked, I know, multiple times, but
Yes. Unfortunately, yes, we are.
We actually are. Yes.
Yeah. There's, I think that, some of the indicators are, number one, all the sightings, all the captures, all the market recaptures to estimate population, has really kind of painted a frustrating scenario when it comes to the pythons. And also some of the indirect measurements would be that the mammal population in the Everglades is decreased dramatically. So raccoons, and they do gut contents of the large pythons that they capture, and they're eating almost everything. they're seeing deer, they're seeing raccoons, bobcat. I don't think that they've found panther yet, but they're capable.
Yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, we are. Yeah, pythons are an issue, without a doubt.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's. I hope we can recover. The Glades can recover from them, but who knows? Fingers crossed. But it's going to take a new approach, I think, or different approach than what they've tried so far.
Yeah, I think they've really shifted to python management because they never going to be able to get rid of them. But I mean, if you watch any of those shows, or I mean, I actually ran into a python hunter maybe about 5-6 months ago, and had just unbelievable, interesting conversation with him. And he was pointing out pythons and finding pythons along the same trail that I had just walked. I never saw them, and he pointed them out to me.
Wow.
And he's like, there they are. I'm like, I'm looking, but I don't see it. He's like, look a little closer. And then he's like, okay. So he would go and catch it and put it in his bag and then report it to the park. And he was one of those sanctioned python hunters, licensed.
Wow, that's so cool.
Yeah. He also showed me a lot of rattlesnakes.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I was shocked by those.
I guess if you know where to look, and I'm not really into snakes. The ones I see are usually run over on the road somewhere, but
yeah,
as many.
Like, it could be like.
Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was saying that it's like us being able to see bonefish.
Yeah.
Or permit, or even tarpon in Biscayne Bay. The water is crystal clear, but you look right through them.
Yes, that's right. We talked about one of these questions you brought up. Do you see iguanas down in the park or no?
I see them in Biscayne National Park, but not in Everglades. I haven't seen them there yet.
I guess it wouldn't last long. I guess the pythons would get them, right? Pretty quickly.
Yeah, I don't know. They can outproduce predation, I think. So they produce so rapidly.
You want to talk anything about the tours, about the culinary tours, or you want to stay on the fishing?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I would stay on the fishing thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Let me pause it for a second. Any plans to fish out west or to go out west? West meaning
I would love to.
American West. I don't mean the West Coast.
Like Yellowstone. Yeah. Last time. Let me see. I was in. I fished the Tetons and Yellowstone a couple years ago, and I went too early in the season. It's always tricky. I think that traveling and fishing is tricky, just because the timing of things, especially like melt off or whatever things happen in mountainous regions. But I was really disappointed because the Tetons are gorgeous, but the water was running so high and off color compared to the time I went before. The time I went before, I had great fishing in the Tetons. But then I moved up to Yellowstone, and it was a joke because the fishing was so good in Yellowstone.
Oh, wow.
My standards for trout fishing, I'm not sure how to calibrate them. But if I'm catching between 12 and cutthroat tend to be big.
Mm-hmm.
So anywhere from 12 to 18 to 20. It's a nice thunderstorm.
Yeah, I see that.
12, anywhere from 12 to 21 inches. I'm really happy. And
what fly were you using? Do you remember?
A lot of elk hair caddis in Yellowstone, and then hoppers.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's so fun to fish hoppers and big dry flies.
Yeah, there's no tentative take or soft take with a hopper. Half the time they're launching halfway out of the water to eat those things. It's my favorite terrestrials,
Yeah, it
especially
is.
hoppers. When I was in Greece, we were
awesome.
fishing big cicada patterns, I told you. And size down to size 2, if you can imagine that. Hoppers,
Wow.
fishing hoppers is as good as gets. I mean, partly because my eyesight isn't what it once was, so I can't really see a size 22 trico, but I can see a size 8 grasshopper or a big caddis that floats nice and high in the water. That's hard to beat.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. It's like, hey, they're biting on, size 22s. And I'm like, I don't care. I don't need to catch fish. I'm gonna catch them on my terms.
Yes.
It doesn't always work out that way, but
You see,
fish is supposed to be fun.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I have a friend that's a purist and will only fish tiny little dry flies, and even if there's no hatch, but to each his own. But this is kind of a very general
I thought I was
question.
being a purist.
Yeah. Do you see? I think about this a lot because we have a lot of the same interests. Do you see a common thread throughout your interests, like art, science, nature, fishing? Do you see some? Why do you think you're attracted to all that stuff and always have been? Like, and not bowling or shuffleboard or something like what?
Right.
I think I know the answer, but can you put it into words? I've tried my whole life, but
I think that's a really, I love that question. It's I'm just thinking of the breadth of that question.
or does there need to be a common thread? You know what I mean? Maybe there is.
Well, I think there is
a lot of varied interests, maybe.
I think there is. I think that number one, nature inspires. Nature, I think it inspires creativity. It creates problems, which again, requires creativity. And what's interesting is you have to follow nature's rules. When we start thinking about the things that we do, I really do think that nature is going to be the source of everything that we engage in. So even boat building, you're dealing with wood, you're dealing with water. How do you learn to, how do you learn to actually make something that'll take you through nature in water? So you have to learn, you use science in order to do that. And then, you can use science to design a boat and build a boat, but it can't be ugly.
Yeah.
So you need art. And, then again, you go back to nature. So I think that nature inspires, it informs, and you can't really negotiate with nature.
And it allows for creative, like you said, creative problem solving, if you want to call it solving. But
right. Yeah.
But I guess it goes back to inspiration, right? Like I've always thought that too, like the common thread of the things that I like, they're all related. Like, how can you say oil painting is the same as bow hunting? Well, it's not exactly the same, but it's the things that I paint often have to do with nature. And that's my inspiration, but they're all connected in nature in one way or another.
And it's meditative. I mean, if you're,
that's true.
Depending on what you're painting, a lot of times you're thinking about, a scene, and it could be the B-roll scene. It could be just the setting. It may not be the deer or
the place,
the quarry. Yeah, it could be just the place. So I think that's what it is, and then, I just think it builds on each other, and it's it tends to guide you, and then you go out, and then you have these experiences, and then that's more feedback, and that impacts the next painting you're going to do or the next boat you're going to build. I mean, you think about how boats have changed, even, just to fish the same water. There's a new boat. There's a new boat to fish that same exact water.
Or new fly rod. Got to have the latest and greatest.
Yeah.
Because a Loomis from the 90s isn't good enough, right?
It's so funny you say that. I was thinking about that. I'm like, do I need to get a new fly rod? I'm like, no.
I've gone
this fly rod.
I keep buying slower and slower rods. I'm going the opposite of most people. Imagine that.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
Can you think of, this is another less deep question, I guess, but can you think of a favorite or just memorable fishing story? I put you on the spot here, but one that really stands out in your mind.
I think it froze. It could be that my internet's not so good. Could you?
Can you think of a particular fishing story that stands out in your mind, just from good or bad or strange or funny? Or I'm putting you on the spot. There's so many of them, but
I have two. I have one that involves you, and then I'll tell the other one. But the one that involves you was I'm trying to think of where we were fishing, and so we pulled ourselves. We're in my boat, and you and I pulled ourselves through this. If it were on the shoreline, it would be called a rack. It's basically the high tide mark where all of this vegetation had accumulated in the mouth of this little creek. And you and I, we pulled the boat through there, not knowing what we were going to find. And it was the middle of the summer. It was difficult. It was buggy. And we finally got to a place where there was water flowing, and it was, even though it was milk chocolate, there was a snook feeding, and it was sipping probably some sort of some small fish off the surface. And snook being snook, they're always in a tight place. And I remember that you're on the bow, and it was a trout situation. It was definitely you had to feed this. Really, the cast was the hardest part, I would say. But you made a cast, you caught the fish, and it was crazy. And we found our way out of that place. And that's a place, that's something that I can still see that.
Yeah, me too. I can very well. Yeah. It was one of those tight spots where if you screw the cast up, you're going to lose your fly, or you're going to spook the fish. So I just and I'm trying to think of how there was a lot of currents. I had to kind of cast it upstream, but not hook the branch hanging down, and the fish is facing the current, and it was like, oh my gosh. Yeah, and that's what I can see is I could see the snook right behind the branch that was hanging down, and I'm trying to think about how you're able to cast and actually not catch the branch, but actually and land the thing. That was dicey. Yeah. But so that was a really cool classic, backcountry Everglades type of fish, and cool sight fishing, in dirty water. And then I would say another one was a day when I caught a permit tarpon and bonefish in Biscayne Bay. By yourself? Yeah. Yeah. That's an important detail in the story. It is funny. That's the one thing is I tend to have time off when other people don't. And I move slowly. As I mentioned before, I pull flats. I see things that aren't there, then they are there. It's kind of strange. So it was one of those things where I'm very patient, maybe probably too patient, but that's what's required. And I went to a place, I got a tarpon early in the morning, and
a baby one. Biscayne, any like 10, 15 pounds. Got it early in the morning. Then I happened to cross a bonefish, and I'm like, oh, I got a bonefish. And then I just kept moving around, and it was the first permit I had ever caught. So it was kind of cool to catch it after catching a tarpon and a bonefish in the same day. So
you're
I thought it was pretty cool.
For those of you that don't know, he's polling the boat looking for fish. And then I assume you were jumping down and casting, or were you casting from the polling platform?
So I was able to, it was one of those things where if you've done this, the good thing about these fish is they swim into the tide. So I saw it was a schooler permit, and the water depth was such that they're right on the edge where they could be vertical in the water column. And then they were going up in slightly shallower water where they would have to kind of bend over to the side. And I watched them do this a couple times. And then they would, they were just kind of doing this rotation, and then they would go back into a channel. So I watched them do that a couple times, and I'm thinking, so I looked out and I put myself in the stream that they were coming up in. So I gave myself quite a bit of distance, and I drifted right into them. There they were. I was on the bow because I kind of set myself up. So I drifted right into them and put a crab, one of those classic, shag carpet crab flies on it. And to my surprise, it took it. And 15 minutes later, really hard finding fish. 15 minutes later, I had a permit. So,
you filmed a little bit at the end, like the release. Was that on your phone or was that on a camera? I don't remember. But anyway, I saw it. I was like, whoa, because you're holding it by the tail and kind of reviving it and make sure it's okay. And that was cool.
Yeah, so that was really cool. Yeah. So yeah, that's another image in my mind. I could, my boat was yellow at that point. I just remember, releasing that fish. It was pretty awesome. So yeah, that was a great time. That's just something that, again, I just, I chalk that up to being patient and to learning how to fly cast in the snow in Kentucky.
Yeah.
So
very cool.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's a great story to finish on. And just for the listeners, I don't know how many times that a Grand Slam on fly as a solo angler has happened in modern times. I imagine in the old Biscayne Bay days in the 50s and 40s, it probably happened. But although people more likely fished together, so maybe it wasn't that common, but it's a rare thing for sure.
Yeah.
Especially nowadays.
Yeah.
That's gonna be tough to beat.
Yeah, I want to do it again.
Yeah, of course.
That's what I want to do.
Yep. That's the Everest of fly fishing in the bay right there.
Yeah.
Well, Paul, it's been, we're actually over an hour now, but
oh, wow.
Been great having you as a guest. I always learn something. You and my friend Ryan Gill in different ways are, when I fish with you and when I hunt with Ryan, I always learn something, it's like I'm with the professor on the water when I'm with you, and when I'm with him, he's the professor in the woods. And I learn you and Ryan can identify plants I would not have known, what kind of bug that is, what kind of bird, it's just incredible. So it's good to have friends like you that, not just close friend, but a teacher at the same time and a mentor for me in many ways. So I appreciate being on as a guest.
Absolutely.
Fun. Is there anything I didn't cover? I'm sure
but hopefully once I get out and start fishing again, you'll have me back on.
Yeah, for sure. That'd be great.
More adventures to share. So,
thanks, Paul. Thanks so much.
Absolutely. My
Take care. All right.
All right. You got it. Bye-bye.